Hello again. Welcome back to All for Women's Football. So much has happened in the world of women's football in the last 7 days that we thought we'd do. And I seem to do a lot of these. Most of the time when it's me hosting, it's a roundup show. Whether you could call me lazy or what, because I can't think of a different kind of show idea. Maybe that's the way. But to be fair, there's so much to get into. As it said, you can see on the thumbnail, that's only a handful of things we're going to be talking about today, because there's a lot that's happened with contracts and transfers, pre-season tours, WSL champions, all of those kind of things, and a few farewells to talk about as well. So we're going to get into all of that just after this. Oh, there we go. Should we try that again? We're going to get into all of that after this. Dear me, how many times have I clicked the intro button and that's never happened? Do you know what happened there? I clicked it that fast, I double pressed left click. So that's what happened there. I'm sorry about that. But there we go. And yes, this is probably the first time since February that all six of us have been on the same show. That is quite something. So it's been a while. And yes, we're all back together. This is great, isn't it? It's going to be good. It's going to be a good show. Yes, Sean as well. The six, unbelievable. It's so a lot to get into on that one. I can see all your comments a bit earlier on as well about certain people on the thumbnails and all that kind of thing. I quite like the thumbnail, to be fair. I thought it captures what we're going to be talking about quite nicely. And to be fair, I didn't give Jess much notice. I did message her halfway through the afternoon.
Thank you, Connor, for hyping up my thumbnail. I worked really hard at that when I should have been doing my actual job. So that was very quickly done. But yes, I'm happy with it as well.
There we go. It literally was. I just voice noted Jess like, I don't know, 3-4 o'clock this afternoon. Like, Jess, thumbnail, help, please. This is rough. This is the rough idea. Put something together, and they did. To be fair, saved me this afternoon. So appreciate that. How is everybody? I'll throw that out to anyone who wants to answer it. Are we all doing well? We're all back together and talking women's football. There's a lot of thumbs up. Oh, Jess, I swear to God, Jess. Okay. You two, we're gonna have words after this. People aren't going to get the reference. I might end up whacking that picture on Twitter at some point. All I will say, for those of you missing, me and Jess went on Stretford Paddock. Go to the end, pause it, and you'll see why they're doing. Oh, there we go. I might just wait for Mia to get the picture up so you can see what we're about. Oh dear. We'll carry on. Anyway, we might come back to that later on in the show. But there we go. Right, we'll start with the WSL champions then. Here it is. That's why there was a load of.
I don't feel like we're seeing that quite well enough.
Do you want me to hang on?
There it is.
Why I did that, I don't know.
Is that your LinkedIn profile picture?
I don't know why I did that. I've never done that ever before. but there we go. So that's why you might see some thumbs. I don't know what's going on. Should we start with the WSL champions then? Because a few weeks ago, obviously we spoke on this channel about, after the Liverpool win over Chelsea, Emma Hayes came out and said the title was not going to Chelsea this season, all of that shenanigans. Well, Laura, start with yourself. Well, she was wrong. It did end up going to Chelsea. Again, obviously we could talk about the game as well if you want. Chelsea blew United away at Old Trafford. It wasn't even a contest. First 10 minutes, Chelsea had won the title. City did what they needed to do, got the win as well. But yeah, did you expect that to happen in the manner it did? Did you always think Chelsea were going to end up winning it? What's your kind of thoughts on that one?
I expected Chelsea to win, but not in the manner that they did. I thought it was going to be a pretty tense end of the season. I thought it might be a little bit exciting, but I was sat at Arsenal in the press box, and it was like, I don't think our game had even kicked off, or it was very near the start of the game, and it was like, oh, Chelsea are 1-0 ahead, and then it was like, not that long after, oh, Chelsea are 2-0 up. And it's like, oh, here's another season that they win again. And like, I do think that for Emma Hayes' legacy and for everything she's given to women's football, it was nice to see her off with a win of the WSL. But it's kind of a bit boring. I just want to see a new winner. And to mix it up a little bit. And I did think it was going to be a closer run thing. I think especially when Villa equalised at City, it was like, this isn't the exciting day that I'd kind of hoped for. But all credit to Chelsea and all credit to Emma Hayes, because it really felt like she'd kind of masterminded that psychologically in terms of saying we're out of the title race and then blowing Bristol away 8-0, knowing they needed goal difference and scoring, like, what was it, 13, 14 uncontested goals in the next 3 games. Like, okay, fair enough. You can have the title.
I was going to say, Meg, I'll throw that question over to yourself. What Laura's just referenced there, talking about Emma. Do you think it was a mind game thing? You know, what Emma Hayes, when she came out, as I said, that was her exact wording, and the title's not going to be coming back to Chelsea this season. And as Laura just said, absolutely smashed Bristol, smashed United on the final day. And I think someone just put there, both WSL and Premier League title races literally were done on the final day within the first, 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I think she came out after the game and sort of said it's the toughest title that they've kind of won in terms of, you know, it was down to the last day. I know, obviously, it's not been the only title that they've technically won on the last day of the season, but because of how tight it, you know, was between them. But yeah, I mean, after losing 4-3 to Liverpool, and she literally said the title isn't ours. And it's a bit, especially when it's still mathematically could have been, you know, could have been theirs at that point. Why would you say that? Maybe that was a mind game, because obviously some of the things she then, when she was reciting that sort of like poem or whatever it was in one of those other press conferences, and it's sort of like people were sort of thinking, you know, maybe it really is City's sort of thing. Obviously then City lost to Arsenal in the, you know, they were 1-0 up after, until the 89th minute, and then Stina Blackstenius got 2 goals. But yeah, when they blew Bristol away with 8 goals, I think a lot of people sort of thought, okay, they probably will go on and win it now, because, you know, they've got rid of that goal difference that City were, you know, ahead by, you know, at least like 8, 9, 10 goals. And then they go and score those 8 against Bristol. And yes, Bristol were relegated, and, you know, Bristol are the side that people have been able to score a lot of goals against this season. But I mean, yeah, for them to score 6 against United, I thought, Old Trafford, United have just won the FA Cup. They're going to be shattered, and that, you know, they celebrated a lot after the FA Cup, but they're going to be up for it. It's the last game of the season. You know, that they were parading the FA Cup around the Old Trafford, so, you know, they really wanted to, you know, make it a great final day for the fans, but that unfortunately wasn't the case. But no, yeah, I think it was mind games from Emma Hayes, and obviously she's been absolutely incredible for the league, for Chelsea. You know, it as much as it wasn't nice to see Chelsea lift it again, it was because of Emma, with it being Emma Hayes' last game. I mean, if it wasn't her last game, I would have been fuming still. But no, it was nice to see her lift it for the final time and see her get. I mean, she got so emotional, and it was, you know, as much as it wasn't nice to see her being emotional, but you could really see how much her time at Chelsea really did mean to her and the players around her. So yeah, it was nice to see in that sense.
Yeah, I think you talk about, obviously, with it being Hayes' last game. So, Mira, I'll throw it over to yourself as well. Obviously, while we're talking about Chelsea and lifting it and so on, there was always going to be one fairy tale that wasn't going to happen. It was either Steph, obviously, Horton retiring, obviously, from City, or Emma Hayes' last game. It was going one way or the other. It had to. And obviously, it went to Emma Hayes and Chelsea. Obviously, you were at the game as well, you know, in terms of how the game went. What I did find interesting, though, the Chelsea, I said this on the previous show, that Chelsea fans were celebrating when Villa equalised against City. And I was like, it doesn't really matter. You're 5-0 up. Like, you've won the league anyway. But yeah, is that kind of how you envisaged the final game going? And I guess a word on Emma Hayes, you know, the fact that, again, you know, they just don't seem to give up, do they, Chelsea? They find a way somehow. I know they were relying on City dropping points, but they just always seem to get over the line.
Yeah, it's funny that both Meg and Laura said that they're happy for Emma Hayes and Chelsea, because Arsenal helped them hugely in securing that title. And if City would have won that game, I think we'd have seen a different ending. Yeah, I mean, Emma Hayes, I don't know if you guys, she her first US interview was put out today, and she said that she likes a challenge. And I think she's drilled in to her team. It's pretty obvious that she's drilled into that Chelsea team over the last few years that they don't ever give up. So when she's come out and said that title race is over, no way. There is no way she thought for a second that they was going to pack everything into to lose that. There's no way. It's a tough one. Do you know what? I've got to say as well on the Chelsea fans, they filled the away end of Old Trafford, completely filled it. And there was a couple dotted around the home end as well, and they made so much noise. The atmosphere that they created for their team, for Emma Hayes, was just, I said to Shannon the whole game, it was unbelievable. I have not seen anything like that at a women's football game. I don't think ever. And you could tell that it meant everyone that was wearing blue that day, it meant the world to them. And it's not like you get bored after you win a trophy, you get bored after you win 3 WSLs in a row. This means everything to them more now because Emma Hayes is leaving. And what a way when you essentially you lose everything else that you've been put into, that you were pipped to win. To bring that home for them and on that day, and for them to celebrate. To be fair, lifting the WSL trophy at Old Trafford for them must have been a bit of a weird one. But again, the crowd was unbelievable. There probably wasn't another place that they could have done that. Probably Stamford Bridge better, but yeah. Have I answered your question? I sort of forgot where it was halfway through. I've just waffled.
No, absolutely. And you're right to mention the Chad. There was a lot of Chelsea fans in the home end as well. Like you noticed it when Chelsea scored. I kind of looked around. Hang on, there's Chelsea fans like everywhere, like around the ground. So there was a lot of them, kind of scattered around. And the away, I said to somebody, I said that's the best. I think away. We've had, from a United point of view, Newcastle came to LSV with a lot of fans. Chelsea by far, I think the biggest United have seen from an away following. Jess, if you want to have your say, like I said, obviously, as we kind of said, Barry, I'm not going to repeat the question for you. You could just follow in as well. The fact that Chelsea did just get over the line again, and not just get over the line, as I said, to win it in that fashion. Obviously we're going to speak on Frank Kirby and Miedema in a second as well, in terms of like bowing out with a goal as well. But like everything just went for Chelsea. Like if you could write a script for Emma Hayes leaving and Chelsea, like that's just everything that United are a team that knock them out the FA Cup. United are praying the cup, but they don't care because they've got the WSL and lifting it right in front of the same team that knocked them out of the FA. Like everything was just written, wasn't it, for Emma Hayes and for Chelsea?
Yeah, like you say, it couldn't have really been any more perfect for them. Like Mia already touched on as well, their away fans was fantastic, to be fair to them. I've been to a number of men's games, and one of the season tickets I used to use of one of my friends was located down by the away end. And I would say that they're like away following in terms of like numbers, and just the kind of like sea of blue shirts you could see was like almost on par with like a men's game, especially when you consider kind of total number of people there overall. But yeah, I thought they were just fantastic. They just basically taught United a new one, to be fair. Just a really sort of clinical performance from Chelsea. I only watched the first half because I had to dip out to a wedding, and I was not going to bother watching it back afterwards. But yeah, they were really fantastic, to be fair to them. It was a champion's performance. I think moving forward, I think we do want to see different people kind of win the league, but that's an issue that seems to be occurring more and more in every league. If you look at men's football in the Prem, we've always said how good the Prem was because we've always had different champions. Well, City have just been dominating now for like 10 years, basically. The Liverpool win in the men's Prem was kind of a bit of an anomaly. So I think that is becoming a bigger issue in football as a whole, the kind of disparity between top and bottom, or even just top and kind of runners up. I think the fact that City pushed them so far this year, I was really hoping it would go down to the last day just for like a little bit of excitement. And that is kind of what you want to push for the league as a whole. But people are going to have to put in some serious work to kind of catch up with Chelsea. And you never know, now that Emma Hayes has gone, then maybe it'll be time for some other teams to step up. But yeah, what a send-off for Hayes. She's been a part of the English game for a long, long time now. And whether you like her or not, you've got to appreciate her talent, the way she handles her players, what she's done for women's football as a whole, to be fair. So fair dues. She got a send off, and yeah, lucky for them, really.
I don't think there's a huge amount to add based on what everybody else has already said, to be fair. You've got to give the Chelsea fans credit. Came through loud and clear on the television screens, how loud they were. I remember when United went on to get the late winner at the Emirates, we were speaking at that point, and it was really from that moment on that people have made a massive deal about getting an away end in football. And I think this again shows why away ends are so important in terms of women's football, because it gives the supporters the opportunity to be together. I mean, it did crack me up. There was a moment on the screen where they were showing the Chelsea fans, and there was a Man United fan in the away end, and you could see them saying, "Oh, look, there's a brave Manchester United fan." I'm just like, well, it shouldn't be allowed. Like, if you've got an away end, you shouldn't have the home fans in the away end. If they've deliberately booked it all out for that sort of reasoning, I find it a bit bizarre that's an acceptable thing to happen. So I do think that they need to tighten up on that a bit more. And if they're going to have such a thing as an away end, then they should have an away end, and it shouldn't have any home fans or anything like that either. But I do think that we've got to give Chelsea just immense credit. You know, they turned up for that game. They were switched on. United were not switched on at all. And Chelsea went and took advantage of it. You know, they've inflicted the biggest defeat that Manchester United have had, and they did it with style. You know, they went out there, they did everything they needed to do. I mean, it was 15 goals, as Laura was saying, 8 against Bristol City, 6 against United, and of course the 1 against Spurs. But let's not forget that as much as you've got to give Chelsea credit, you also have to look at Manchester City. Nobody's been a runner-up in the WSL more times than Manchester City. That is the 7th time they've been the runners-up. And for all the fun of Chelsea being the winners for 5 years in a row, City are also the only team to be runners-up 5 years in a row. So, they've got their own little bit of sort of history going on there as well. And, I suppose really the only thing I would throw out based on what Chelsea have done is that we've just spoken. Jess has just mentioned about the City men winning 4 on the trot, and it being unprecedented and never happened before. And it's quite frustrating that you've got Chelsea having done that literally just last season, completing that particular moment, and now being on 5, and people still can't find the column inches to throw that out there. And say what you will about whether they think the quality of football is different or anything like that, doesn't take away from the achievement that Chelsea have managed, and specifically under Emma Hayes. And so it will be incredibly interesting to see how things move on from them. But I think everybody just has to sit there and congratulate Chelsea. City had it. It was there. It was in their hands. And then Butterfingers, or Blackstenius fingers. Because as soon as those 2 goals went in, it did for them. And Chelsea, they just pounced. Like Emma Hayes said, as soon as you leave the door open, we were always going to walk through it. And that's exactly what Manchester City did. So they had the chances. You could argue that Man United had their chance and they left the door open the season before as well. And that was how Chelsea ended up winning it there in the last game of the season. So you got to give them credit. Really good performance from Chelsea. It's 5 years on the trot from them. And it just goes to show, Emma Hayes is a bit of a legend. There was a part of me that was really wanting her to have won something this season because, sentimental reasons, really. I think when you've given that much to a game, you've been that much of a pioneer. You look at Sir Alex winning his Premier League trophy just as he was leaving the game. I think actually it's probably good for football that she was able to walk away having won something, because it may have spoilt the legacy just slightly if she'd have won absolutely nothing.
No, I tend to agree. And like you said, you mentioned Blackstenius. Shane said there is as well of Sam Kerr thanking Blackstenius at the end of the game towards the camera on that one as well. But, everyone says about, obviously, yes, Arsenal did need to do something against City to open the door to Chelsea, but Chelsea have still got to win their games and claw back the goal difference that they had to do. They did what they needed to. And I said to win it in that fashion. You know, I think a lot of people, we've all kind of said we expected the game to be a little bit closer than it potentially was. There's a lot of reasons for that from a United point of view in terms of what maybe went wrong there. But Chelsea are exceptional. When you've got a player like Ramirez, who has kind of been in and out, obviously, with her own little injuries as well, she was unbelievable in that game. Completely bullied the United backline. So, yeah, that's why I wanted to start with Chelsea and things like that, because I think it's worth mentioning. And we might have a separate show just talking about Chelsea and Emma Hayes' kind of legacy at Chelsea and those kind of things. I think that deserves its own little show, I think, you know, after 10 years and all the trophies. And fun fact for you, I think this is correct. I'm going to say it. I'll say fun fact with an asterisk next to it because I think this is true. Emma Hayes has never lost to the same team back to back in a whole Chelsea career. So not losing to United would have been the first time. If United had beaten Chelsea on Saturday, that would have been the first time in Emma Hayes' whole career at Chelsea that she's lost to the same team in back-to-back games. So, yeah, that's one hell of a record to walk away with.
I can't imagine she's lost that many games, full stop.
There's got to be someone on Twitter that's put this out there, what her actual record is at Chelsea. Someone definitely has, and I've not seen it. But I think you're right. There can't be that many defeats that she's had in her whole Chelsea career. They don't lose that many in the league because there's not that many games when you think about 22. So there can't be that many defeats in there, really, when you think about it. They've won the FA Cup a lot of times, so there's no defeats there, really, for the most part. They don't enter the Conti Cup until later stages because they're in the Champions League. And they usually get to the semi-finals of the Champions League. So there's not really too many opportunities for defeats. I'll leave these kind of guys to, and if anyone in the comments wants to go and fact check that. But like I said, we'll probably, I want us to do another show on Chelsea and Emma Hayes in particular, because I feel like it's definitely worth doing as she departs. And someone did say earlier on, she starts her US job in 2 days, I believe. She's no rest. She's straight in over in the US national team job. Oh, there you go. She has a 71% win rate. That is ridiculous. And as Paul said, 7 WSLs, 5 FA Cups, 2 Contis. That's one hell of a record over a 10-year span. Completely dominated English football. Right, we'll move on to a couple of, I guess, farewells then. And I guess kind of the fairy tale that most fans of those clubs would have wanted to see. Laura, you were at one of them. Obviously with Miedema, and there was obviously a few other Arsenal players had a send-off as well. Miedema comes on, scores with what I believe was her first touch. So quite an impact when she came on. And yeah, if you want to talk through that one, in fact, Fran Kirby as well, her last game for Chelsea, gets a goal. And like, there's just so many, like, I guess, poetic things that you want to see in football for send-offs.
Yeah, I'll talk on Viv Miedema because I was obviously there. I mean, they had a round of applause on the 11th minute because obviously that was her shirt number. And you talk about atmosphere, but Meadow Park packed out of Arsenal fans. It was kind of a send-off in some ways. Obviously, there will be a few games at that ground next season, but a send-off for that ground as the kind of main home stadium. And to just the whole ground was shaking. Like I could feel it shaking under my feet with just how much noise was being made by the Arsenal fans in that 11th minute. And it was just a crazy kind of weird atmosphere of like bittersweet, just so happy to be there for her final match and wanting to support her, but then also knowing you're witnessing like her last ever match in an Arsenal shirt. And then, yeah, seeing her come on again more and when they were chanting her name all game, Viv will tear you apart, ringing around every 10 minutes. And then when she finally came on, it was like, again, just like goosebumps with how loud it got to cheer her on. And then, yeah, obviously scoring with the first touch, Beth Mead assist, you absolutely couldn't write it. And it was so good as well. And you just know when she gets played through in that moment, you're like, this is going in. And the fact that she celebrated, which is for most players not a big thing, but for Viv Miedema to celebrate that moment, it was just like so poetic. And it clearly meant so much. And then, yeah, another really, really good assist for the Freedom Mornham goal. 2 contributions. I like this. Like I wrote a little piece about her. I said 2 contributions to a player who Arsenal will sorely miss. 2 fingers up to a manager who claims he won't. And I think that is very true because Jonas Eidevall was trying to justify his decision. I was quite proud of that one, I have to say. Yeah, I think he was trying to justify the decision, and he said that he was 100% certain in the post-match that she would score. And it does make you think, like, if you're so certain that she can produce in those moments, why is she not sticking around? But there's obviously reasons for it, and I think, yeah, it was a very, very, very good send-off. If you want to read that piece, it's on the Sports Gazette, so go check that one out.
I definitely will after that. If there's any more of those kind of lines, that's brilliant.
There's a whole reference in there.
I feel for Arsenal fans on this one because it's a real tough one, isn't it? Because obviously, with Viv's injury record, obviously, it's a tough decision to have to make. However, 80 goals in 106 in the league, I've always said, for me, she's one of the best players the WSL has seen. So to let a player like that go on a free, and very, very likely to a direct rival in the league as well in Man City. I mean, Meg, does that make it hurt a little bit more that the likelihood is she's going to end up at City? And yeah, if you just want to talk us through your thoughts on Miedema's kind of, I guess, send-off that she got at Arsenal on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost like a punch in the face to Jonas when he brought her on and she scored with her first touch. It was almost like why the hell have you not given me a new contract when that's what I can do? And that it was so nice for her to be able to sort of, I feel like that's what she felt when she scored with the first touch. She probably had Jonas in the back of her mind and sort of wanted to prove him wrong in a sense. And also when she celebrated, because as Laura said, she's not a celebrator when she scores her goals, really. She's very low key. And so the fact that she celebrated, almost felt like she was sort of saying to Jonas, like, this is what you're getting rid of. This is what you're losing. And when I first saw the news, I didn't realize she was still so young in a sense. Not like, 27, like that's still so young in a game of football. Like a lot of players kind of hit their peak at 27. I mean, I know kind of in this day and age, players hit their peak so much younger than that, but some players still hit their peak at like 27. And obviously Viv is one who hit her peak many years ago. But the fact that, it just baffles me that we've let her go, didn't offer her a new contract. And I mean, the rumours are obviously coming out that it's a fallout between Jonas. Barry, you mentioned whether we'd seen that video of her little scrap with Jonas on the touchline at Everton away. And there obviously has been something going on behind the scenes. It really would be interesting if that ever did come out, if Viv ever spoke about it, if Jonas ever spoke about it. But it just baffles me. And what's that? Yeah. But when she the fact that she's going to City, it angers me even more, to be fair, because they are literally a direct rival of us, because you've got Chelsea, who have been winning the league, consistently, and then it's kind of been City, Arsenal kind of almost battling it out for kind of that second place, second best kind of thing. And you look at the team that City have. Obviously they got rid of a few players at their last game, Steph Houghton, Demi Stokes, and Ellie Roebuck, who's going to Barcelona. But you look at the forwards they have, just to name a few: Lauren Hemp, Bunny Shaw, like Yui Hasegawa in midfield. You've got Jill Roord, in that. It's just ridiculous. And the fact that, they will likely be adding Viv to that, array of players that they've already got it is just ridiculous. And the fact that Arsenal are letting that happen almost so easily, I can't see why City won't possibly, win the league next season, because they will just have so many world-class players. Obviously, yes, they might, get rid of someone in that front line if/when Viv joins, because I feel like it just is going to happen now. I can't see her leaving the WSL because of Beth. It just baffles me, the whole thing, and how it's all happened. I was looking at the social media posts on Instagram that they put out when they thanked Viv and Sabrina D'Angelo and Kaylin Marquise. Like when they just put thank you at Viv Miedema, and they put more for 2 backup keepers. And yes, they've been excellent backup keepers for us, But the fact that they just put thank you out of Viv Miedema, she's been at the club for 7 years. She has changed Arsenal women so much in that 7 years. And yeah, she in my opinion, she didn't get the send-off that she deserved at all. I could rant on for quite a long time about that, but I won't.
I think that's a fair point. As I said, like a record speaks for itself, and there's definitely a bigger story that behind it, because you just don't, obviously I know there's transfers that still happen on, in the women's game that are free and, at the end of contracts and things like that. But I think when you have a player of that big, we're going to get onto another one in just a second after this one when we talk about the likes of Pateas and so on. It's looking like she's going to stay. It's a similar kind of thing when you're looking at a player that's such a big name to be leaving on a free, and like I said, to stay in the league as well. Mia, so I'll throw it over to yourself, and I said obviously you can talk a bit more obviously about the Fran one as well. That seemed a nice moment from a Chelsea point of view. She got her send off, she got her goal, a good finish into the bottom corner in that one. Like I said, it was just for everyone really, apart from Steph. Poor Steph over at City. She's the only one that, sorry mate, it annoyed her that much. She's like, I'm gone. She can't quite believe it. But pretty much every story was set, wasn't it, on Saturday? They all got their send-off that they wanted.
Yeah. You say Viv is Arsenal, you say Fran is Chelsea. It's just exactly the same thing. And yeah, she got an unbelievable ovation from the Chelsea fans when she came onto the pitch. And then even more so, I managed to capture their celebrations after the Fran goal. I recorded it, and it's just, if you are a Chelsea fan, that gives you goosebumps. That is heritage. That is football heritage. You win the WSL, your manager leaves, and a player of Fran Kirby's caliber and commitment and all of that, she scores. And it's just one of those nice things. And as you said, the only person that I feel really sad for actually is Steph Horton. She had her sort of guard of honor at the Joey Stadium, but City got so close. They were so nearly there to lifting that WSL trophy. And what a player. She didn't get the send off she deserved from England. She deserved a lot better from the England setup, having been the captain for so many years. Scoring so many influential goals as a defender. There's so many that spring to my mind watching her back in the day, and yeah, it's well, I can't say anymore.
I'll just very quickly before Jess and Barry jump in. Sean's talking about United fans giving Fran Kirby a standing ovation. Are you sure they weren't just walking out? Because there's a video going around of Fran Kirby's goal, and it really made me laugh because Fran's running towards the Chelsea fans, and all you can see is hundreds of United fans behind, flooded out of the stadium. So there may have been some giving a standing ovation, but I think a lot of them were leaving. So that's why they were stood up at that point, because that did make it 6. Whenever minute it was in the end. I think it was 84, 85 or something like that. But yeah, Jess and Mary, if you want to have your final say, I said the farewells to WSL 3, I say farewells to WSL, Miedema potentially, and Fran are both staying in the WSL potentially. But yeah, moving on from clubs that they've spent so long at and been a massive part of the history.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm really sad about Miedema, to be honest, because I really, really like her. I think she's been a fantastic player for years, and I'm mostly just upset she's not coming to United, to be honest. But I just think she deserved better, probably. I mean, I won't claim to know what is going on behind the scenes at Arsenal because I have no idea. I don't hear great things about the way Jonas sort of treats his players, but yeah, I don't know. And from other people's reactions as well, everyone is basically shook that she is just being allowed to go. And if it is in fact City that she ends up at, then they have bagged an incredible player on a free, which to me is just insane, really. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about her going to City, to be honest, because I just would rather her come to United. Fran Kirby again is another one who's been fantastic. I guess I'm glad she got the send-off that she deserved as well. You know, she's had a lot of trouble over the years. I think she's had some health issues on top of kind of injuries, which can't have been easy for her. So I just hope that whatever she goes and does next, whoever she plays for, she kind of gets good minutes. Because I just think she seems like a really nice person as well. She's a fantastic footballer. You know, she's achieved a lot both internationally and domestically, and she deserves to kind of have a good rest of her career. Who else was leaving? Steph Horton. Yeah, she's another one. I feel like she deserved better. I think she's kind of struggled the last couple of years, really. I don't know whether she would have been better maybe moving to a different team a couple of years ago. She's sort of been on the benches now for quite a while. I think it was probably the right decision for her personally to sort of leave, and I'm sad that she couldn't get a little bit more from it. Also, that would have meant that City didn't win the league at Old Trafford. That would have been slightly better, I guess, from my point of view. I was a little bit disappointed that she didn't pick up a few more minutes as the season kind of went on, but that's a City thing, I guess. Again, I don't know how much they really like playing under their manager as well. Seems to be a lot of that in the WSL, to be honest. So yeah, a lot of big movers. So I'm very interested to see what everyone's going to do, especially Viv. I think that'll be very, very interesting. And should she go to where everyone is assuming she's going to and scores against Arsenal, I will laugh. And I kind of hope that she celebrates in front of Idaville on the touchline, to be honest, because I think that'll just be really, really funny. As a neutral, that would make my heart sing, truly.
Wow, how'd you follow that? So, 3 players who have had long WSL careers. You know, you look at Steph Horton, 11 years at Manchester City, 233 appearances, over 120 appearances for England. One of the most recognisable people. You know, I can remember during the Euros specifically, you know, she was a very, very big part of that in terms of trying to market that to the girls that we had at our school. You know, she was one of the ones who was really trying to lead that drive. We haven't seen a huge amount of her since then, really. She seems to have gone downwards in that respect. But again, just a universally respected figure, I think, who's achieved great things within the game. You look at Fran Kirby, 10 years at the club, 114 WSL appearances, 63 goals, 195 appearances for Chelsea, all in all, with over 100 goals, 8 WSL titles, 70 England caps. Again, you're talking about an outrageously good player. And, you know, when they had their home game, the last home game of the season, I was, when they were just smashing goals past Bristol City, and it was absolutely obvious that they were going to, that they were going to win. I did want her to score a goal then. So, you know, I think signing off your Chelsea career with a goal in the manner that she did against United was a good thing for her, and certainly something that will live long in the memory for the Chelsea fans. The Miedema one is the interesting one, because with Kirby and with Horton, you get the feeling that both of them are leaving, not necessarily under a cloud, not with any major dramas. You know, I think Fran maybe just thinks that it might be the right time to end with with Emma Hayes leaving as well. You know, that's my understanding. I don't think there's any acrimony behind the scenes there. And ditto with Steph Horton. You know, she just needs to retire because age catches up with us all. Something that on this panel I probably know more about than most at this moment in time. But you'll get there, guys. And when you do, I shall giggle at you. But for Miedema, you know, 166 appearances and 124 goals for Arsenal, 106 in WSL, 80 goals. She was the one who got past Nikita Paris's 49 first, you know, the first WSL player to score 50 goals at this level. At the moment, it's not looking like she'll be one of the first to get to 100. But I think we have to preface the whole conversation with, we do not know what has happened behind the scenes. We don't know why it is that that she's leaving. But certainly that video is very telling. And I think it was only a few weeks ago we were sitting there having this chat about Emma Hayes and the drama that she had with Jonas. And I think this is one of those ones where you do have to wonder if she sort of had the right comments at the wrong time, because you do worry as to why it is that Viv's decided to leave. Equally, could it be just a case of Jonas Idaval being an incredibly astute manager who maybe has recognised that, you know, Miedema's had a massive injury, been out of the game for a while, and yes, you know, she did score last game of the season there, but is she necessarily going to be at the peak of her powers again? Has he seen something that other people haven't? I don't know. But what I do know is there's a lot going on. It's very interesting hearing what Jess is saying about, you know, clubs that seem to have managers where the players are not particularly happy. And the one constant that I could see between those three clubs was that every single one of them has got a male manager. And you just kind of wonder if the messaging is not quite landing. I don't know if it's just more palatable, perhaps, when it's a lady that's giving the instructions and such like, because I don't recall there being huge dramas with Emma Hayes. In fact, you watch her documentary on DAZN when Chelsea are having that season, and she's outright swearing at them, and they're all just like, yes, Emma, yes, Emma, yes, Emma. And it just makes you wonder, you know, does the delivery come across worse for those three than it does maybe for her? I haven't had any problems with Matt Beard, so, you know, maybe I'm creating a problem where there isn't one there, but it's an interesting one to keep an eye on as the time goes by. But three fantastic players, and the WSL will be worse off for them not being there.
No, for sure. It'll be interesting to keep an eye on where, obviously, Fran and Vim in particular get off. End up, Sean mentioned, obviously, if it's true, if Kobe does go to Palace, that's huge. I'm still not convinced on that rumour. I can't lie. Purely because of wages. You think, I know Franco was one of the highest paid in the league. Surely Palace cannot match that. She maybe would take a bit of a drop, but she's not going to take a drop down to championship level wages. Well, obviously WSL now, but I just can't see it unless they're going to go massive on, upping their wage bit. But if you're another player in that team, you're going, well, hang on a minute. If you're paying her that much, I want a new contract and going up to a certain level as well. So it might happen. I genuinely don't know, but I'm not so convinced at the moment. But one to keep an eye on. Right, the next couple of questions, I'm not going to go around the whole panel because I want to try and keep it brief. There's a couple of kind of things. I'm going to ask the question, and whoever wants to jump in on it can do. But I say that, but Mira, I think I am going to throw this one more towards you first. We've had a lot of announcements, I guess, over the last few days. Players confirmed to be leaving clubs and on the move and things like that. Let's go to Juventus because that's the shirt you've got on. Julia Grosso was the one, obviously, that recently announced that she's leaving Juventus. We spoke about her on this channel. She's been linked to United in the past. She's linked to the WSL. There's a couple of other things that, Madrid has been mentioned in the past as well. I mean, where can you see her? And are you surprised Juventus let her go? Where can you see her going? Because she's an unbelievable footballer and still young as well.
Yeah, I'm really surprised they let her go because I know that the new manager hasn't been confirmed, but he's pretty much set in stone. And I know that his ambition is to progress through the Champions League, and to do that, you need to have some of the best players, and she is one of those players. And Juventus they have a pretty good budget, but they're not they don't make the same money that other clubs do in other leagues. It's just not quite there. They make the most certainly across the Serie A, but to let a player like that go, who's been involved in the side for like 3 or 4 seasons now. It was her first professional contract. It's sort of all she knows. Now, from a Juventus perspective, to let her go is a really silly business because they've let her go on a free. They've run that contract down. They're not going to get any money for her at all. From her perspective, I think it's a good move should she decide to go to Real Madrid. Should she move to another club in Europe, I think it would be a good move for her. Juventus have been pretty poor this season. They've just been really bland, and they haven't met any of their expectations that they set themselves this season. So from her perspective, it's a good move, I think. But yeah, poor business from Juve. I'd like to see her at Real Madrid. I'd like to see her do well. I really wouldn't like to see her in the NWSL, because I think that she started her career in Europe. She knows what there is to win. The Champions League is one of those things that she could win. She has the potential to be one of those players with a medal around her neck. And her ceiling at 23 years old is just sky high. It's unbelievable. So that's, personal preference. Obviously, my personal preference would have been for her to stay at Juve. That's not happened for whatever reason. She might want a new challenge. That's one of those things. Juve also let go of Lineth Berenstein as well, Netherlands striker. Hadn't scored a Serie A goal since Christmas. However, when she's on form, is such a brilliant natural goal scorer. And Juve are renowned for their young attacking options. They've got so many youngsters coming back this season who have been on loan last season. So that's another one that's a good move for them, really, for both sides. But I expect another European side to pick her up very quickly. And then the last one for Juve, who they've not announced, but I can't see her at another club, is Barbara Bonansea, who's been a name across the Italy national team for years and years and years. She's, I think, 32 or 33, but you can tell that she's progressing towards the end of her career, but she still has a lot to give. And I'd like to see her move into the WSL. She wouldn't be an expensive move, but she'd be a very, very, very wise move. She wants to stay at Juve. I'm not sure the new manager would keep her, just purely based on all the attacking options that they've got. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to see. But there's a lot going on in Italy at the minute of teams just trading people and stealing free agents and all of that stuff. So we'll have to see. But it's going to be a very exciting summer.
It certainly is. Grosso for me is definitely the one I'm keeping an eye on, because I think there's big questions on that one. I love how Sean's already beat me to it. Hang on, that's not the one I was on about. Hang on, there was a bit. Yeah, I know it was that one about going to Rome. I think she's probably going to Germany, to be honest. And to the green side of Germany, not to Bayern Munich on that one. So that's where I think she would probably end up going on that one. But we don't know. Nothing's confirmed on that one. All is confirmed that she's leaving. Right, as I said, if anyone wants to say on any of these, just completely interrupt me. I'm going to throw another name into the conversation. On that one. Player that maybe is not necessarily leaving, but contract talk seems to be coming to a close finally. Alexia Putellas is another name that's just a name. We should have just whacked her on the thumbnail because, we're all about the views. I'm obviously joking. But that's a name I can just randomly drop into the into the mix. Who wants to go first on her? Because it looks like finally that contract is going to come to an end. I think Angel Perez, who's a very, very good reporter in Spain, seems to think this is going to get signed tomorrow, which, if that is the case, this has probably been such a long saga on this one. And there was doubts that she wasn't going to sign, and there was potential interest in her as well. Are we all kind of in agreement that that's probably for the best on that one, that she's...
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. I think it was probably always going to happen. I don't know whether Barca were just taking a little minute to consider things after she got injured. I know she's been struggling a little bit since she came back. We've seen a lot of players that have come back from ACL injuries, and then they've had like hamstring issues and stuff like that. So maybe part of it was just giving her an extra few games, see how things go, trying to run it down to the end of the season. But let's face it, Barcelona are just hoarding players, so why would they get rid of her? They are continue to be just sort of getting anyone and everyone. So I think for them it's good business. She's still probably the best player on the planet, and she's easy got another few seasons in her. So good business probably from Barcelona. I think she's probably had a hell of a lot of interest from everyone else. But I imagine for the majority of Barca fans that they're probably happy. I'd like to see her somewhere else just to mix things up a little bit, and just to try and stop Barcelona from having everyone.
It's an interesting comment there of saying, as a Barca fan, I wouldn't extend her unpopular opinion. I know. I don't think it's as unpopular as I think. From a marketability point of view, Putellas is probably one of the biggest names around. So I don't think it's a. I don't know. I've been not critical, but disappointed with how Alexis plays since she's come back from her injury. Obviously, it's going to be tough. She's come back for, obviously, it's one of the worst injuries you can have. So I don't know. That's why I thought it might have took a bit longer. But yeah, I don't think it's massively unpopular. I to be honest, I said the NWSL. I could just see her over there, just with money and how big of a brand she is and everything else.
I think because of how long I can't see her going anywhere else because of how long she's been at Barca. And yeah, she's made over 400 appearances for one club. And I think when a player does that, it's so hard for them to leave, like regardless of whether they're still the best player in the world or, you know, whether they've dropped off massively. Like Alexis Putellas will always, especially by Barcelona fans, but also by, you know, women's football fans in general, will always be regarded as one of the best players to grace the game. I mean, she's won 2 Ballon d'Ors, you know, to show for it. And this season in the league, she's got 8 goals and 5 assists. And for a lot of players, they would dream to have those sort of statistics in a season. But in the 21-22 season, she had 18 goals and 15 assists. So obviously there is quite a comparison between the two. But when you've got someone like Alexis Putellas, you obviously set kind of a standard. And I think we've said with Mary Earps before, like, because she's, you know, got all these accolades as best goalkeeper in the world, you set a standard. And if they drop below that, like, everyone starts like thinking the worst sort of thing when they're still one of the best players in the world, really. And when you've got a midfield of Alexis Putellas and Bon Mati, yeah, that's just ridiculous. And Barcelona won't want that to end, will they? So yeah, cannot see her going anywhere. I can see her retiring at Barcelona, in all honesty.
I agree, and there's obviously a lot of chat about other players potentially at Barcelona. Yeah, obviously Caldente is the big one. I think if you're looking at a Barcelona out this summer, I think Caldente is probably the one, and obviously Arsenal seems to be. I don't know, is that publicly reported yet? If it's not, yes, I agree. I think that is probably her most likely destination, in my opinion, where she's potentially off to this summer as well. So we see. We keep an eye on that one as well. Yes. What do we say on this one? If Bon Mati ever left Barcelona, that would be
same thing though. Where do you see Bon Mati? You don't see it anywhere but Barcelona. You don't. You put Bon Mati is the best player in women's world football. Alexis Putellas is so, on her day, she is that too. Barcelona is the best club in the world. Yeah.
What that comment said, do they not like each other? I know this is off topic really of the football side, but is that like a known fact that they don't like each other?
I did not know that.
We'll chat afterwards.
I know that's more of like a gossipy tabloid kind of thing, but I'm sort of invested now.
The thing is, whether they like each other or not is highly irrelevant. It's how they speak to each other on the pitch, which is the most important thing. Famously, Andy Cole didn't get on with half of the 1999's treble inside, but you never would have known it just through watching it on the sidelines, and I think that's kind of how it should be. Listen, she's 30 years old from what I can see there at Putellas, and she's had to come back from quite a big injury. Is she going to be the Putellas that everybody knows and loves? I think, arguably for me, I think it's far more important for Barcelona to keep Bon Mati than it is to keep Putellas. Would be my humble thoughts on that one.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. I think she's going to be on a fair old whack of money, and rightfully so, by the way, for her next contract. Putellas' contract is rumored to be absolutely huge to keep her over the line. You wait till you see what potential Bon Mati is going to look like. Because as we've said on many shows, women's football is still relatively small. They all speak to each other, are well aware how much each other are earning. So if that gets around, there's definitely some on that one. Right, we may as well stick with the Barcelona theme then. And Laura, because you've not spoken to her, I'm going to ask you about this. It's a very, and this is not going to, I'm going to very, very clear and just say this is never going to happen. But while we're talking Barcelona, Ella Toon, what's going on there? Could you, just as a question, could you ever see a world where that transfer happens? Or do you think this is just one of those just, potential, dreamland ones?
I think the only world in which it happens is if, I don't think it will happen, just to caveat all this. It feels like, I just thought it was an absolutely hilarious transfer link, and it's what you want from transfer season. You want a bit of hilarity in the midst of all the excitement and departures. You want a bit of the absurd in there. I think that's what transfer season's all about. So I was all here for the rumour. I don't think it's going to happen. The only time I can see Toon going to Barca is when maybe she's done a bit more with United. She feels like she's given what she can to United there. Yeah, well, and then she's reached that point in her career where she's a little more, I guess, settled, more mature, and she goes, you know what, I fancy a year-long contract on the coast in Spain, win a trophy or two, maybe win a Champions League, add that to my trophy cabinet. But even then, I don't think it's ever happening. I think she's likes Manchester way too much, and I don't think Barcelona is at all similar, sadly.
Hey, we had the sunshine over the weekend.
Can we just take a moment to imagine how that would go? I mean, football fans will remember back in the day watching a certain Joey Barton trying to do a French accent. And can you just imagine Ella Toon popping into some of these Spanish shops, Oh, I'm after some tapas. What's going on here?
Hola, Nan, it's Ella.
You just can't imagine it, can you? There you are in a sleepy Spanish village somewhere, and then in comes Ella Toon. I'll have a coffee, please. Unbelievable.
I think in the entire world of women's football, Ella Toon would be one person you would not imagine even learning a different language. Like, you've got Lucy Bronze, who will probably happily learn every single language there is under the sun and speak it fluently. Then you've got Ella Toon. Like, I was watching the most recent Toonie and Russo podcast that was released today, and every week I watch it and I'm like, she's never leaving Tyldesley. She loves Tyldesley too much. As someone said in the comments, she doesn't even like London. I just could not imagine in any world her trying to learn Spanish, and just wouldn't happen.
I was going to say, someone took that a bit quite seriously, didn't they, when they were reporting?
Very good.
Reporting that one. But yeah, I don't know. To be honest, I don't think it's the last crazy transfer we're going to see. Story that we're going to see. Someone mentioned it a bit earlier on. Is it gone? I've lost. I should have started it. I've not started many this one. Barca interest now. Look at 8. Yeah, exactly what I mean. You look at the amount of players Barca have been linked with already. I seem like we're just talking about Barca, but I do have one more player to bring up because Jay just mentioned Lucy Bronze is the other one. It does seem like with Pateras extending Lucy Bronze's Barca contract potentially has hit some stumbling blocks as well. Where can we all see Lucy Bronze playing next season? Can we see her staying at Barca? Could we see her going back? I've got a theory she goes back to a club she's already played for earlier in her career, like a Liverpool or somebody like that she's played for before her kind of big major honours. Can anyone else see that? Am anyone else on the same wavelength? Everyone's nodding. I like this.
I believe, if I'm right, she's one of Barcelona's highest paid players at the minute. And so, I mean, if they were to get her off her books and then obviously start paying, for example, Pateras a lot more money, then that, it kind of works out for them. But where she goes, I don't think I've seen any specific rumours as to where she'll go. But yeah, I could definitely see her going back to a Liverpool or Sunderland. It would just be kind of a full circle moment for her. I was reading an article and someone said, oh, she's not tried Germany yet. Maybe she'll venture out to Germany and go Wolfsburg or something, which maybe, but I don't know. obviously she hasn't added German to her resume of languages that she can speak. So maybe she will want to do that. Maybe she'll join Stanway in Bayern. But no, I could see her coming back to the WSL, or maybe, you know, ending her season in the Championship or something like that. I wouldn't put it past her, because, you know, she was one of those players who wasn't she working at a pizza place, like, to earn enough money when she first started out as a footballer? Like, so I could certainly see her. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure it was on.
Like, also Domino's in the events.
So yeah, I could see that being like a really full circle moment, and sort of, you know, going back to where it all started for her, to be fair.
I was nodding because if she goes to Liverpool, that's a hell of a signing for Liverpool. You know, having just finished fourth, that would be quite a statement. But yeah, that's my 2 pence on it.
Very true, Trevisher. Yeah, I think the news here in Spain is that Barcelona want to extend. I think they probably do. It's whether they can afford to do it, I think, is going to be the big one. You know, with players that Barca potentially want to bring in as well, can they afford to keep hold of her? As Meg said, her wages is already high. Can they afford to do that as well? We shall see. Lots of transfer. There's loads that we've not even covered really on that one. I'm sure there's loads that we've missed. We're probably going to do separate shows on contracts expiring, because we're coming up to June when contracts obviously come into an end. So I'm sure we'll do another show separate to this one, where we literally all we talk about is contracts and all that kind of thing. Right, before we wrap this one up then, he's on the thumbnail, so we've got to do it. Mark Skinner did get offered a new contract last week. Tom Gary reported it first. It was signed before the FA Cup final. It was just reported last Friday, so the day before the last game of the season. Yeah, Laura, I'll start with yourself. Were you surprised when this came out? Because I think it's very telling when a club puts a tweet out and it's got more quotes than replies, and most of the quotes are opposition fans. I think that tells you pretty much most of what, when you have a look at the numbers on that tweet, I think it's 3K likes and about 2K quotes, which, if that's your ratio, that tells you a lot in terms of what you're doing. Yeah, are you surprised that United offer him a new contract, or are you not so surprised with Ineos coming in and potentially wanting to stabilise the club a little bit with keeper managers for next season?
Yeah, I think surprised from a footballing perspective, and like what would be probably the best thing for the women's team, but not surprised from a context of United at the moment. I think when you look at Ineos's history with taking over sporting teams or sporting like groups, and then having to deal with the men's and women's side, their support of women's sides and the women's aspects of those sports has been historically poor. They did the same with the cycling team when they took over from Sky. They haven't supported the women's team in the same way that they've supported the men's team. And even in the men's team, it's not gone as well as that team were. So I think historically, you look at how they've treated women's sport, and you're looking at, okay, maybe they will in a few years' time come round to it. But I think their priorities are absolutely the men's team at the moment. I think that's become very evident in this decision, in their treatment of the FA Cup final for the women, in their treatment of the celebrations and that end of season party for the club. And yeah, I think it's sad to see that. But yeah, I mean, in terms of Mark Skinner, potentially it's kind of tough to, if we're talking about it without the context of Ineos, it is tough to fire a manager or not offer a contract to a manager who has just won the FA Cup. But the underperformance in the league is really, really, really poor from where they were last season, and losing a couple of very key players in the summer to not really properly replace them. It doesn't show great managerial intent. I'm sure this has been discussed on the other channel as well, but yeah, not surprised because of the context, but I don't think it's necessarily the best decision.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and you're right to bring up, obviously, that Ineos, and there's a lot of concern, I think, amongst the United fan base with Ineos, a bit sceptical in terms of what we might see happen at United over the course of the next year or so with Ineos and seeing what they do there. I'll go around the panel in order. So Jess, you're going to have the final word of the show, which I'm sure you're very pleased about. So Barry, Meg, Mia, and Jess can round us off on your thoughts on this one.
I think when it comes to Manchester United, it's a much bigger story in general than just Mark Skinner. There is so much going on at the football club that I don't think it can just be seen and viewed through the lens of just whether or not Mark Skinner should or should not be the manager of Man United Women. I think that I can understand people being sceptical of Ineos, absolutely. But I think also people have got to recognise that this is not an overnight fix. It's not something that's going to happen within, days, weeks, months. This could be a long process for Manchester United in general. And I think that is it's like when you move into a new house, for example, you sit there and you think to yourself, what is it that you're going to prioritise? Obviously, the first thing you might think of is, well, we need to sort out the bedroom. We've got to get the bed sorted so there's somewhere to actually sleep. And then you might think, well, we're going to need to get the kitchen sorted because we need to be able to cook the food. And maybe things like the living room are the things that you end up doing last, even though they're the place where you might spend most of your time. And in general, there's other things that you need to sort out. And that's the hard part. Perhaps you've got a front gate that's not working very well and it's sticking. It needs a bit of WD-40. There could be loads of different things that you could need to do. And we just need to remember that, I think, for Manchester United and their point of view, that Mark Skinner is just effectively an oily fence. He's not necessarily a bedroom or a kitchen at this point in time, because it's such a period of mismanagement of a football club. That's it. He's gone like out of town. It's like playing the old shooting in a barrel game. But yeah, I just think that that's a really important point for United. When it comes to Mark Skinner specifically, he has just delivered the first major trophy that Manchester United have won. Yes, there was the championship with Casey Stoney in that first season. But Mark Skinner did manage to bring across the first major trophy. And for that reason, I can understand why, if you were in charge of Ineos, you've got a difficult position. Now, let's be clear that the league performance wasn't good enough for Manchester United this season. And there is every chance that if he continues to perform poorly going into next season, that the 1-year contract will be ended soon. And I do think that that's the key thing. It's a 1-year contract, and that shows that he's got the pressure to deliver, because if he doesn't deliver, then the chances of that contract not being extended are huge. It also gives Ineos a year longer, potentially, to try and work out if there is somebody out there who is better equipped for the job, if that's what they want to do. Equally, it also gives him a year to actually do incredibly well. And you do have to think about his first season, or the first season when we finished second. It was a very good season, and we made the FA Cup final. This season, Manchester United only made it to the FA Cup final. They did not manage to do incredibly well in the league. So I think that when you look at it that way, you can understand why it's been given. I think he's under a lot of pressure moving into next season, but I can understand why it was given. And from a business point of view, it makes sense. But there is a lot of anger, I think, as you said, amongst the United fans. You can see that the quote tweets and everything from the extension wasn't the most ideal. But there's a lot to do. Polly Bancroft didn't end up being the magic key that everyone was hoping she was going to be at United. And I just think there was a lot that has gone on around that club. It's just bigger than the oily fence.
No, I completely agree. I mean, it's interesting what Barry says about the 1 year. It does essentially say that they don't kind of almost trust Skinner to take United on over, however many years. They've sort of said, right, we're giving you a year to prove yourself. And, if you don't improve on, the league form that you've, underperformed on this season, then ultimately you're going to be gone. And it's funny you mentioned about Polly, because she's coming to Grimsby Town, which is that's what her move was from being head of women's football at Man United. So I'm sure I'll be meeting her in the next few months, because she's coming in as CEO of Grimsby Town Football Club, so that'll be interesting. But no, I think looking at it if I was looking at it from an Arsenal perspective, you'd probably think, oh great, Mark Skinner's staying. That means we're going to get, an easy win against Man U next season. Like, I'm sure a lot of fans are probably looking at it in that way, in a sense, because how poorly Man U have done in the league this season. But it is so hard, because I mean, if I was a Man U fan, I don't know, because yes, he has just delivered an FA Cup. It was two teams that had never lifted the FA Cup before, but it was essentially one team who had, experience at Wembley against a team who had never played at Wembley. So, was that FA Cup win down to Mark Skinner, or was that down to purely the hungriness of the players for themselves rather than Skinner? And I think that was probably the case. So if I was a Man U fan, I mean, I think I wouldn't be fuming if he'd been given a year's contract extension, but I would question it, and I'd say, well, why does an FA Cup? I mean, yes, an FA Cup, obviously, it doesn't overshadow the league form, but it sort of says, look, yes, the league form's been so poor this season, but we have gone on to win an FA Cup for the first time and beat Chelsea in the semi-final to get there, which, is an incredible achievement, because Chelsea are Chelsea. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Man U do in the next, especially in the in the first half of next season, and especially in the transfer window. If you sign some players and people go, Man U mean business, then it might be a completely different story to what people are thinking, but only time will tell.
Yes. So Mark Skinner's it's a really weird one, because obviously last season was a really good season for United. That you come second, there was a point in it. It was just generally a really good FA Cup final. And then there's been a massive dip this season, and it's not been enjoyable to watch. It doesn't really seem like players are on the same wavelength, and it's all just a little bit clunky. And I don't know. I mean, it's obvious, right? We've all said the 1 year extension proves that they're not building a project yet. This is not a long-term project. This is a quick fix. This is who's better right now. Who's available? Who's better right now? Who knows the players? Mark Skinner's there. He's just won a cup. He's done okay. His mid-table finish isn't where this club should be, but it's one of those seasons. It just feels to me like Mark Skinner needs some more experience as a football coach, and I don't think with a club like Manchester United, when you hear that name, you immediately think they're pushing for the title. And whatever way you think of Manchester United, if you say that club name, they are pushing for the top. Mark Skinner is not a manager that pushes for the top. He came from Birmingham City. He's not got a lot of real proper gritty football experience. And I feel like if he was to go and do that and take on a championship and get it, and people are saying he's experienced, but where? Because I don't think that he is experienced enough to take on a club like Manchester United and make them successful. He's obviously won this FA Cup. He signed the deal before the FA Cup. They was, I think they was probably expecting a win. Anything less than a win that day would have been bad. Because, oh my goodness, imagine if he'd have lost the FA Cup final and then they'd had to announce that he'd signed a new contract. Then that would have kicked off something silly. But yeah, he's just not. They know he's not the guy, but as everyone else has alluded to, it seems like background staff, the board, they're not really in a position to give the women's team their full attention. So it's easier just to stick with what you know. It also feels like they're really out of touch with the fans, because the fans have made it pretty clear for most of the season that they don't really root for him. And I think the players don't really root for him based on how they've played this season. So I think that reflects pretty badly on the new board. But what can you do? This is all now on Mark Skinner to turn around and prove us all wrong. And he started really badly. He started really badly on Saturday because, there's a lot of factors. Players were probably knackered. End of the season, it didn't mean absolutely anything to Manchester United, apart from the fact that they were playing at Old Trafford, which they don't get to do very often throughout the season. It's a shame, but it's all on him now to prove everyone wrong. And I hope he does for the football club and the fans who turn out at LSV week in, week out.
Yeah, I think I very much agree with everything that's been said so far. Like Barry mentioned, I think there's more going on at United, and unfortunately, the women's team is just kind of not a priority right now. Now, to me, I do think that's a little bit of like a kind of cop-out, because I think a club as big as United must have enough people to manage multiple sides. And quite honestly, the men's team haven't really done anything. It's been the women's team and like the youth teams that have done really well this season. So if anything, bin off the men and fund the youth and the women. But as that's not going to happen, I do think that it's just basically like a stopgap. They don't think that he's going to do particularly well, I don't think. So they've just offered him a year contract because it's easier than doing anything else. Now, I think with some decent backroom staff and a better structure behind the scenes, we might see a performance or a season closer to what we saw with United the previous season, where they finished second, obviously runners-up in the FA Cup. I do think that is kind of possible again, but I don't think the club or the team are going to progress anymore under Skinner. I think it's probably got as far as it's going to go. The issue is with signings, for example, he signs all these players for United and then they never play. They need 6 months to bed in. They need 12 months to bed in. And that you can't do that at top level football. You can't sign players and then have them rot on the bench. It's just, you can't do it. If you do it, I understand that sometimes transfers don't work out, but more times than not, we're seeing players get signed and sometimes never even step foot on the pitch. And that to me is just not good management. It's not, whoever's identifying these players is not doing a good enough job. If it was the case that every time a player was signed, they needed 6 months to bed in, then every single team would have the same issue. And you'd just be playing football matches with 11 players that have no idea what they're doing, ever. So I'd say that side of things is not going to improve. And that's been one of the biggest issues with United this season, from what I've seen. I do hope that United do kind of step up this transfer window. Obviously, as a fan, not only of the club, but like as the game as a whole, you don't want to see players constantly being signed and then just sat on the bench, because that's not good for the game. So I do hope to obviously see an improvement, as well as an improvement of performance on the pitches as a fan. I hope that by some miracle we do have a better season, but at this point it just seems quite unlikely with how sort of poor this season has been. And I think also the lack of signings that United made in January was quite concerning, because in January players were seriously required. Defenders were needed. There was a lot of injuries and not a single signing was made. Now I understand at that point, obviously there was a lot of issues with ownership and things like that, but it worries me if that will be kind of seen again in summer. And going into a new season with that I don't think it's going to bode well for the team. But hopefully I will be wrong and United will finish first and I will be happy. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. It'll certainly be interesting. I think United will be a good team to watch over summer for either the players they bring in, the players they get rid of, or the lack of any movement. I think it'll be very, very interesting to see what they go to.
Yeah, certainly going to be a big summer, ins, outs, and all things in between. Certainly, United, I think, is definitely a club to keep an eye on with obviously new potential ownership. And Chelsea potentially further down the line for the women's team as well, obviously with new manager, but also potentially new structures going into place at Chelsea as well, further down the line as well. Right, we'll wrap it up there before we do, just because you mentioned it in the comments. So there has been an interview. Mary Ups has done one for Sky Sports WSL. You can go and watch it. It's about 1.5 minutes long. What I will say, her last paragraph in what she said, the exact quote: "Yes, talks are ongoing. I've asked the club for certain confirmations on what they're trying to achieve as a club, and once I have those, I'll be able to make a decision. So really, it's up to the club," is her exact quote at the end of that little interview. So very interesting. Basically, putting all of the talk back on basically pushing it back in the club's direction, saying they need to offer me what I want in terms of money and in terms of everything else around it as well. So definitely a transfer saga to keep an eye on. Right, we will wrap it there. Before we do, there's a show tomorrow. As you may have seen last week, it was Laura's. Barry hosted it, but Laura definitely set this one up and was in the pipeline for a long, long time on this one. So we've started a new little mini series. I don't know whether to call it mini or not. We might be doing this for years to come. Who knows? It could be our longest running series called Team Talk. The first one did go out with, that Barry did with Brett. Forgive me, who was it with? Because I don't want to say the name wrong.
Lee Holmes.
There we go. So make sure you go and watch that. It's about 20 minutes long, so it's a nice little short bite-sized interview for you to enjoy. We'll be doing lots more of those over the next kind of few weeks as well, with another one coming tomorrow that Barry has arranged as well on this one. What time is it tomorrow, Barry?
7:30. We're going a little bit earlier because these football people need to be tucked up in bed nice and early, ready for busy days. But yes, we've got Alec Marshall coming in. He is the manager of Kings Lynn, and anybody who's been on this channel will have noticed I have brought up Kings Lynn. They are the team, God bless them, that shipped over 100 goals, finished bottom of the table, had people leaving, and it was just such a disappointment for them. But the way in which the team carried themselves was just absolutely amazing, including going on a 220-mile round trip to get relegated. They knew that was probably going to be the case as they were doing it. But honestly, just listening to how he goes and how his own personal change, how the year before he was doing the TikTok media, and then before you know it, he's managing the team. Like we said, we wanted to get into this for the stories. That there's a fair few on this one, so a bit more lower league football. But yeah, 20 minutes, go and watch it. It's a perfect thing to listen to on your way to work or on your way back.
Indeed. Or both. And if there's a certain club, I wasn't planning on saying, but if there is a certain club player or any kind of story you want us to potentially try and interview and reach out to, let us know who that would be. That can be across the world and across the pyramids. We will try our best to potentially get them on for a chat within reason. Don't be dropping Alexia Pater's name. Within reason, obviously. But as Barry said, there's so many stories out there. The Brentford one was fantastic to listen to as well, and I'm sure the one tomorrow is going to be just as good as well on that one. So let's have a new little series that we started. It's so much fun to have these kind of conversations and stories on as well. We're going to have a lot more specials coming up in the next kind of few weeks. We've got, obviously, as we're now at the end of the season, team of the season wraps and things like that. Nearly said something completely different then. That would have been a whole other show. Team of the season wraps. I can't look at you now because I'm just not laughing. So all of those kind of things coming up as well. And as I said, we're getting towards contract ending and just stop laughing. All of those kind of things. So we'll have transfer shows and everything else coming up. Make sure you like the video, subscribing. Go and follow the TikTok as well. Meg's done a TikTok earlier on today. Laura did one over the weekend as well. A nice little coming me to the press. So 2 amazing videos to go and watch. And again, they're even shorter than the YouTube videos. So you've got no excuse for them because they're about 1.5 minutes. So you can go and give those a watch on that one. And yeah, if not, we'll be back next Monday, 8:30 for another new show. It's Barry in the hosting seat back again. So ones to look forward to. It's been great having you all in the comments. It's been great having a full panel back as well, because it's been a while since, as I said, literally early February was the last time all 6 of us were on. Make sure you like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. We shall see you guys in the next one.